Ani bojo, Jordan Indigenous Mr. Taga, the credit Donjaba, Makwa Dodem. Hello, my name is Jordan. I'm a part of the OAS Outreach team, and we're launching a series that's going to blend archaeology with culinary. And our first theme that we're going with is one of my favorite times of the year, and that's the first berries that come up. That's the strawberry, the odamin. So we're going to look at two different recipes that we have today, and that's odamin abu, heartberry juice, or more commonly known as strawberry juice. Ode meaning heart, min is the berry, and abu referring to the juice. And the second one is a strawberry shortcake recipe from 1874 out of a Nova Scotia cookbook, and I'm gonna blend it with an Indian donut recipe for the cake base. So I got about 2 pounds of strawberries here that we picked earlier this week, already cleaned and hulled. I'm gonna chop them up, or you can mash them up. I'm gonna split it into two different pots. In one I'm gonna add maple sugar, and the other one I'm just gonna add white sugar for the strawberry shortcake. So like I said, you could mash them up really quick, put them on the stove and be done with it. But I thought I'd chop them up and take a few seconds to share some thoughts and stories. The Anishinaabe follow a lunar calendar, meaning the 13 full moons out of the year. June ends up being one of the busier times of the year. We got our theme, the Odemini Gizas. Gizas is the sun. Paired with Odemini gives us that strawberry moon. We got the summer solstice and Indigenous Peoples Day or month. And I was asked recently if I was going to do anything to celebrate, and I responded that every day is a celebration. That it's kind of how I was taught to think about it, think about life. And every morning that you wake up, it's a good day and a good life. So I'd like to touch on another important time of the year, and that's Zizbakatoke Gizis, that maple sugar moon, or the maple syrup season. It's that beginning of the year for the Anishinaabe, our New Year's, where all the plant life starts to break from its slumber. It's not just a day, it's the prep work before the season begins, collecting wood, getting the equipment, setting up the trees to tap, collecting the sap, and then boiling it for almost every day for that month-long process. The family and friends stopping in to give a hand or sit, learn, or watch the sap boil for hours on ends. The struggle of keeping warm as the last of the winter tries to hold on, or the endless days of trying to keep up with how fast the sap runs. And as that season comes to an end, it's the sharing, the storytelling of how that season went, or the curious questions. And my favorite part is gifting that small bottle of homemade syrup to people. I like to practically give all of it away, and I'll be using the last of it of this year's syrup, and I can't think of a better way than to use it with the first berries of the year. There's so many hidden things in the stuff that we eat, when we can begin to look beyond simple sustenance. Something as basic as maple syrup has dictated almost a quarter of my year, my daily activities, where I traveled. Those same questions get asked by archaeologists all the time. And when we turn around, we're already beginning the next celebration of Damien Gizis, that strawberry moon. So when the berries begin to ripen, they're led by those strawberries, and then come in the raspberries and the mulberries and the blackberries. And days will be spent picking, cleaning, preserving. Meals are gonna be heavy influence of all these different berries. Stories will be told, songs will be sung, and memories created. To me, that's the goal of this idea of looking at archaeology through culinary practices. Finding strawberry seeds on a site paints such a vivid picture for me. I can envision those fields of wild strawberries stretching their runners across the ground. The anticipation of tasting that fresh, sweet fruit in what felt like a lifetime ago, not having grocery stores to supply you year round. Anyway, now let's kind of get back into the recipe. Indian donuts, the name might be a little outdated. If you haven't had one before, the taste is like an old-fashioned style of donut. One of my favorite things to make is kind of controversial because some view it as an indigenous cuisine and some don't. You got processed sugars, enriched flours, salt, oil, and lard. Obviously, not natural ingredients to indigenous peoples here. But it's important to note that, we had variations of these things. You could make a more authentic recipe using nut flours or other grain flours that we had locally, sweetening again with something like maple syrup. You could get quite a tasty recipe just as easily. But I want to focus on this one and how every family kind of has their own, and this is one of the ones that was taught to me. So we'll mix our dry ingredients together, and then we'll separate the well and add the rest of our ingredients, and we'll mix it lightly until we get a nice liquidy batter that we'll use later on. Looking at flour, salt, sugar, and lard, they have that negative story to them. After being forced into reservations, they became our ration, so to speak. So the use of these ingredients came down to a means of survival. No longer being able to harvest as freely or hunt as freely. At times even having to get permission to leave the reserve. Forcing that new way of life that was needed to adapt to. And when I think about food, I think about the depth of our relationships with those foods. Those old foods being the building blocks of ceremonies or teachings or the way of life. All these new ingredients don't have that same history, that same relationships with these foods. And if you don't have a good relationships with something, you abuse it or you get abused by it. But they do tell a story, a story of pain and suffering, but also a story of resilience, of survival and flourishing. After the dough is mixed, we just want a nice sticky, runny consistency. We'll let it sit for 5 or 10 minutes, and in the meantime we'll get the stove on with our oil and we'll preheat the oven to 350. We'll take our dough and we'll lay it on a bed of flour, and we're just gonna gently knead it from the outside. We're gonna try to do it as least as possible. We just want it enough so we can handle it without it kind of falling apart. And then afterwards we'll just spread it out and make the cutouts of the donuts and make the holes. On the stove, we're just going to flash fry the donuts for about a minute, minute and a half, just till they get a nice light golden brown. And then we'll put them on a tray in the oven for another 3 to 4 minutes to kind of finish cooking, or until they're done in the middle. And then after that, we just cut them open and start plating. Miigwetch for watching and listening. I had a lot of fun making this recipe and sharing my stories. If you decide to make any or have a favorite recipe using strawberries or other type of berries that you want to share, we would love to hear. Until next time, Bamapi.